The night Lily spilled wine on Julian Ward was supposed to be just another long shift. The kind of night she hated most, where her feet ached inside cheap black shoes, and her tray wobbled under the weight of drinks she could barely afford to smell. She was 25, a virgin, and painfully aware of every reason why her life had turned into a cycle of work and exhaustion, paying off medical debts from her mother's surgeries, supporting a younger brother's education, and trying her best not to collapse under the weight of it all. Working at the most luxurious hotel in New York felt like punishment. Every night, Lily watched the glittering guests glide through marble halls, men in tuxedos and women in gowns that cost more than her yearly rent. She had learned to keep her head down, smile politely, and never ever make a mistake. But that night, everything went wrong. Julian Ward was not supposed to be there. The billionaire CEO of Ward International was a rare sight at public events, known for his brutal efficiency and his refusal to waste time on appearances. He was 30, devastatingly handsome, and the kind of man people whispered about in awe or fear. His sharp gray eyes missed nothing. His reputation was built on control, power, and never letting anyone get close. Lily had heard the rumors like everyone else, but she never expected to see him up close, and then she tripped. It was an accident. The tray slipped, her heel twisted, and in one horrifying moment a full glass of red wine spilled forward and splashed across Julian Ward's perfectly tailored white suit. The entire room seemed to stop breathing. Lily froze. Her cheeks burned with humiliation. She opened her mouth to apologize, but nothing came out. She was sure she was about to be fired on the spot. But Julian surprised everyone. Instead of shouting, instead of demanding the manager, he simply raised one eyebrow, looked down at his ruined jacket, and then looked at her. His gaze was unreadable, sharp, and assessing. Lily felt like she was standing under a microscope. For a long, breathless second, he said nothing, then his lips curved slightly, not quite a smile, but something close. "What is your name?" he asked softly. "Lily." Her voice barely worked. "Lily Carter," he nodded once. "Come with me, Miss Carter." She blinked. "I need to get back to work," she stammered. He shook his head calmly. "Not tonight. You are coming upstairs with me." The word sent a ripple through the room. Lily heard the gasps, saw the curious glances. Her heart pounded so loudly she was sure everyone could hear it. She followed him numbly through the crowd, her mind spinning with panic. What was happening? Was she about to be fired in private? Was he going to sue her? She could barely process anything as they stepped into the private elevator, the doors sliding shut behind them. Inside the elevator, Julian remained silent, his expression cool. Lily stole glances at him, trying to understand this man who had just upended her life with a few simple words. She wondered why he was not angry. She wondered why he had chosen her. She wondered if her life was about to change in ways she could not yet imagine. And as the elevator rose higher and higher, her heart whispered a truth she could barely admit even to herself. Sometimes one mistake can rewrite everything. Sometimes the most unexpected fall leads you exactly where you are meant to be. Julian Ward was not a man used to surprises. At 30 years old, he was already one of the most powerful CEOs in the city, known for his sharp mind, ruthless decisions, and complete control over everything he touched. Yet as he stepped into his penthouse suite that night, with Lily Carter trailing nervously behind him, something about the situation felt unexpectedly different. He had never planned to attend that charity gala. His assistant had convinced him last minute, claiming it would look good for the press. But now, looking at the nervous young woman wringing her hands by the door, Julian felt oddly intrigued. The penthouse was a vast expanse of glass and steel. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the glittering city skyline. Everything was sleek and modern, perfectly curated, yet Julian often thought it felt empty. It was a space designed for power, not warmth. And here was Lily, a girl who looked completely out of place. Her uniform was rumpled, her shoes scuffed, her wide brown eyes darting anxiously around the room as if she expected to be scolded or thrown out at any second. Julian gestured calmly to the seating area. "Sit down. Miss Carter." She hesitated, her voice trembling slightly. "I really should get back to work. I need this job." Julian shook his head. "I know exactly who you are. You work hard. You support your family. You never cause trouble." Until tonight, Lily's cheeks flushed with embarrassment. She sat carefully on the edge of the white leather sofa, her hands clenched in her lap. Julian poured himself a drink, watching her from across the room. He had no idea why he had brought her up here. It was completely unlike him, yet something about the way she had looked so terrified yet determined to stay composed had caught his attention. Maybe it was the rare honesty in her eyes, the raw vulnerability that money could not fake, or maybe it was simply curiosity. Either way, he found himself wanting to know more. He walked over slowly, handing her a glass of water. "Tell me, Lily, do you always panic this much over one mistake?" She managed a small smile. "Only when the mistake costs more than I make in a year." They talked for a while, about nothing and everything. Julian was surprised by how easy it felt. He was used to people fawning over him or fearing him, but Lily did neither. She was cautious, yes, but genuine. As the minutes slipped by, he found himself lowering his guard in small ways, asking her questions about her life, her dreams, her family. She told him about her mother's health, her brother's tuition, her own quiet hopes that someday she might escape the endless grind of bills and double shifts. Julian listened more intently than he expected. There was something refreshing about her simplicity, her honesty. It was a stark contrast to the polished socialites and ambitious executives he was surrounded by daily. What neither of them knew was that outside the walls of the Penthouse, the city was already buzzing with whispers. Reporters had spotted Julian leaving the gala early with an unknown woman. Speculation ignited. Who was she? Why had he left with her? Was this a scandal? An affair? A business move? Julian's assistant was already fielding calls, and Lily remained blissfully unaware. All she knew was that for the first time in years, someone was looking at her not as a waitress or a burden or a mistake, but simply as Lily. Julian stood by the window, watching the skyline. He glanced back at Lily, and something inside him shifted. He realized with startling clarity that he wanted to keep her there, not because of some impulsive whim, not because of attraction alone, but because she represented something rare in his world, something unpolished and real, and for a man who had spent his life building walls of power and control, that was both terrifying and intoxicating. He turned to her, his voice softer. "Lily, what would you say if I asked you to help me with something?" She looked up, eyes wide. "Help you? How?" Julian took a slow breath. "I need someone to pretend to be my girlfriend for 1 week. There is a business deal on the line, and they expect to see me settled, but I need someone who is not from my world. Someone honest, someone unexpected." Lily stared at him in stunned silence. Her heart raced. This was insane. This was impossible. Yet deep inside, a voice whispered, "What if this is your chance? What if one crazy week could change everything?" Lily sat frozen on the edge of the sofa as Julian's words hung in the air. She could hardly believe what she was hearing. Pretend to be his girlfriend for 1 week. It sounded like something out of a ridiculous romantic movie, not her real life. Her heart pounded so hard she thought he might hear it. She looked up at him and tried to steady her voice. "Why me? I'm nobody. I'm just a waitress who spilled wine on you." Julian gave a slow, almost imperceptible smile. "That's exactly why. You are real, Lily. You are not here because of money or status. You are not from my world, and that makes you exactly who I need." For a moment, Lily thought about refusing. She had work, family responsibilities, bills stacked up at home. She could not disappear for a week just because a billionaire needed a pretend girlfriend. Yet when Julian added, I will pay off your family's medical debts and cover your brother's tuition. Lily felt the ground shift beneath her feet. That kind of money was something she could not even imagine. It would change her life, her mother's treatments, her brother's future, her own freedom. She swallowed hard and whispered, "You have a deal." The next morning, everything changed. Julian's assistant arrived at her tiny apartment with a car waiting outside. Lily barely had time to pack a bag before she was swept into a whirlwind of fittings, stylists, and media coaching. She stood in front of a mirror wearing a designer dress that cost more than her annual salary, staring at her reflection in disbelief. Gone was the tired waitress. In her place was a woman polished to perfection. Yet when she looked closer, she still saw herself underneath. The girl who had never been kissed, who had never been loved, who had no idea how to pretend to belong in Julian's world. Julian met her later that day at a private rooftop dinner arranged for two. The city sparkled below them. He looked effortlessly composed, every inch the powerful CEO, but when he spoke to her, his voice softened. "You look beautiful, Lily." She flushed deeply. "Thank you. This feels unreal." Julian reached across the table, gently brushing his fingers against hers. "You are doing perfectly. Just be yourself. That's all I need." Over the next few days, they appeared together at galas, charity balls, private dinners, and business meetings. The media buzzed with speculation. Who was this mysterious woman by Julian Ward's side? Headlines screamed about the billionaire's new love. Lily felt overwhelmed. Cameras flashed. Whispers followed her every step. Yet Julian remained steady, his hand on her back, his voice calm in her ear, reminding her to breathe, to smile, to trust him. Slowly she began to relax, to laugh more easily, to forget the weight of her nerves. What she did not expect was how real it all began to feel. Julian was nothing like the cold, ruthless man she had read about in newspapers. He was thoughtful, attentive, fiercely intelligent, and surprisingly gentle. When they were alone, he asked her about her childhood, her dreams, her fears. He listened as if every word mattered. He shared pieces of himself, too, moments from his past, scars he rarely showed, the weight of expectation, the betrayals he had endured, the loneliness that came with building an empire. Lily found herself drawn to him not just as a powerful figure, but as a man who, despite his wealth and influence, seemed just as lost and longing as she was. She caught herself staring when he was not looking, memorizing the curve of his smile, the way his eyes softened when they looked at her. She reminded herself over and over that this was just a contract, just a role to play, but her heart refused to listen. Julian, too, felt the shift. At first, he had been certain he could keep this arrangement purely professional. He was no stranger to negotiations and performances. But Lily disarmed him. She was honest in a way no one around him had been for years. She made him laugh without trying. She made him remember what it felt like to be seen not as a CEO or a billionaire, but as a man. He began to look forward to their quiet moments, the evenings when they sat on the penthouse balcony sharing stories, the mornings when she teased him over his rigid routines, the accidental touches that lingered just a second too long. Their connection deepened each day, and yet both were afraid to admit it. Lily worried she was just another temporary chapter in Julian's life, a pretty distraction soon to be forgotten. Julian feared he was crossing a line that would leave them both hurt. He had spent years building walls around his heart for a reason, yet every time Lily smiled at him, every time she leaned into his touch, those walls began to crumble. The turning point came one evening at a charity event. Lily stood at Julian's side, wearing a stunning midnight blue gown. Her hair swept elegantly over one shoulder. They mingled with guests under crystal chandeliers and soft music. But as Julian stepped away for a moment, Lily overheard a conversation between two investors. They spoke in hushed tones, wondering how much Julian was paying her, laughing at the idea of the billionaire slumming it with a waitress. They called her names, questioned her worth, and implied she was just another bought accessory. Lily's chest tightened with humiliation. Tears pricked at the corners of her eyes. When Julian returned and saw her expression, he immediately knew something was wrong. Without a word, he took her hand and led her outside onto a quiet terrace. His eyes searched hers. "What happened?" She shook her head. "It's nothing. I'm fine." But he would not let her hide. "Tell me, Lily, please," she finally whispered. "I heard them talking about me. They think I'm just here for your money. They think you paid for me." Julian's jaw tightened. His voice was low. "You are here because you are the only person I trust. I never wanted this to hurt you." In that moment, something inside both of them shifted irreversibly. Julian cupped her face in his hands, his forehead resting gently against hers. "I never meant to fall for you, Lily, but I have." She closed her eyes, feeling the truth of his words sink into her bones. "I never meant to fall for you either, Julian, but I have." The contract no longer mattered. The world no longer mattered. All that existed was the quiet, undeniable pull between two hearts that had found each other against all odds. The next morning, Lily woke up in the Penthouse guest room feeling a mixture of awe and disbelief. She had spent the night sitting on the balcony with Julian under the stars, talking about everything and nothing. They had not crossed any lines physically, but emotionally, something undeniable had bloomed between them. She ran her fingers through her hair and stared out at the city skyline, wondering how her life had changed so quickly. A week ago, she was just a waitress struggling to make ends meet. Now she was in a billionaire's world, pretending to be his girlfriend, but feeling more and more like her heart was no longer pretending. Julian knocked softly before entering. Bringing her a cup of coffee, he sat on the edge of the chair across from her, and for a moment they just smiled at each other. "I need to tell you something." Julian began, his voice unusually hesitant. Lily tensed, slightly sensing the seriousness in his tone. "I have been looking into something these past few days," he continued, "and I discovered that your family's financial troubles are connected to one of my company's acquisitions." Lily's heart skipped a beat. "What do you mean?" she asked carefully. Julian sighed. "Years ago, my company acquired a chain of small businesses, and in the process, your father's workshop was one of the ones that shut down. It was a mistake on paper, a casualty of a bigger deal. But it hurt your family more than I realized." Lily's breath caught in her throat. She remembered the day her father came home defeated, his small business crushed by corporate buyouts. She had never connected it directly to Julian's company, but now the pieces clicked into place. "I'm so sorry," Julian said softly. "I never meant for any of this to happen." Lily sat quietly, absorbing the weight of his words. Part of her wanted to be angry, to lash out, to remind him of all the years she had watched her parents struggle because of decisions people like him made without blinking. But another part of her saw the honesty in his eyes, the regret he could not hide, and the man who had spent the last few days treating her with more kindness than anyone had in years. After a long silence, she whispered, "I do not know what to do with this, Julian. I do not know if I can separate you from what happened." Julian nodded slowly. "I understand, but please know that I will do whatever it takes to make things right." That evening, things grew more complicated. Julian's main business rival, Victor Harlan, a cunning and ruthless magnate, had caught wind of Julian's sudden attachment to Lily. Victor saw it as a weakness to exploit. At a high-profile gala, Victor approached Lily with a charming smile that did not reach his cold eyes. "So, you are the girl who has captured Julian Ward's heart," he murmured smoothly. "I wonder if you realize just how many people want to see him fall." Lily felt a chill run down her spine, but she forced herself to stay calm. "I do not know what you are talking about," she replied evenly. Victor leaned in slightly, his voice dropping to a whisper. "Watch yourself, my dear. Not everyone in this world plays fair." That night, Julian found Lily standing by the window, her arms wrapped tightly around herself. She told him what Victor had said, and Julian's expression darkened. He promised her that he would handle it, but Lily could see the weight of the situation pressing down on him. She reached for his hand, surprising them both. "You do not have to protect me alone," she said softly. Julian looked at her, and something unspoken passed between them, a promise, a fragile understanding that they were in this together. The following days were a blur of tension and strategy. Julian worked tirelessly to secure his business deals, while shielding Lily from the media frenzy that had erupted around them. Reporters dug into Lily's past, speculating about her relationship with Julian. Tabloids splashed her face across covers, painting her as a gold digger or a social climber. Through it all, Julian remained steady by her side, offering quiet reassurances and gentle touches that spoke louder than words. One night, when the pressure became too much, Lily broke down in tears. Julian held her close, whispering over and over, "You are enough, you are enough." But the true breaking point came when Victor leaked confidential documents, suggesting that Julian's sudden relationship with Lily was part of a larger scheme to manipulate market shares. Overnight, Julian's reputation teetered on the edge of collapse. Investors panicked, headlines screamed betrayal, and Julian's board demanded explanations. Lily felt crushed by guilt. She had never wanted to be the reason Julian's empire crumbled. "I should go," she told him one night, her voice thick with tears. "If I leave, they will stop attacking you." Julian shook his head firmly. "No, Lily, this is not your burden to carry. I will not let you sacrifice yourself for me." In a final act of defiance, Julian called a press conference, standing before cameras and reporters. He addressed the rumors head-on. "I did not fall for Lily Carter because of strategy or appearance or convenience," he declared. "I fell for her because she reminded me of who I am, beyond the boardroom, beyond the headlines. She is not part of some scheme. She is the one thing in my life that is real." As the world watched, Julian chose to risk everything. His deals, his image, his control, for the sake of love. That night, Lily watched the broadcast from her small apartment, tears streaming down her face. She realized with startling clarity that Julian was not just a man she had been pretending to love. He was the man who had fought for her the way no one else ever had. She packed her bag and rushed to the penthouse, her heart pounding with every step. When Julian opened the door and saw her standing there breathless and teary-eyed, he did not say a word. He simply pulled her into his arms and held her tightly. No more contracts. No more pretending, just two people who had found their way to each other through the chaos. The days following the press conference were a storm of media attention. Julian faced both praise and criticism for his bold declaration. Investors were divided. Some admired his honesty, while others questioned his judgment. Lily found herself the subject of endless articles and social media debates. Strangers dissected her past, her appearance, her intentions. She tried to keep her head high, but inside she felt the pressure mounting. Through it all, Julian stayed by her side, his presence a steady force, his quiet strength giving her courage. He reminded her gently, "Every day we are in this together, Lily. We face it all as one." But behind the scenes, a darker game was unfolding. Victor Harlan was not done. The rival billionaire saw Julian's vulnerability as an opportunity. He orchestrated a hostile takeover attempt, using the media storm and shaken investor confidence to push Julian's company toward the edge. Julian worked tirelessly to block the move, attending meetings, negotiating deals, and rallying loyal allies. Lily watched him pour himself into the battle, his sleepless nights, his tense phone calls, the weight he carried so heavily. She wished she could do more. She wished she could share the burden. Late one night, as Julian sat at his desk, his head in his hands, Lily approached quietly. She rested her hands on his shoulders. "You do not have to do this alone," she whispered. Julian looked up, his eyes tired but grateful. "Just knowing you are here changes everything," he murmured. As the crisis escalated, Julian realized he needed to make a drastic move. He arranged a secret meeting with Victor, hoping to broker a deal that would protect his company and the people who depended on it. Lily was terrified when he told her. "Victor does not play fair," she warned. Julian kissed her forehead softly. "I know, but I have to try." The night of the meeting, Lily waited anxiously at the penthouse. Hours passed. She paced back and forth, her mind racing with worry, finally unable to bear it. She called Julian's assistant. When she learned that Julian had gone alone without security, she felt her heart drop. Something was wrong. Determined not to sit helplessly, Lily grabbed her coat and rushed out. She remembered Julian mentioning the private club where the meeting was taking place. She arrived breathless and scared, slipping inside quietly. What she saw froze her in place. Julian and Victor sat across from each other at a table. Victor's bodyguards loomed nearby. Their conversation was tense. Victor's smile was cold. Julian's expression was set with determination. Lily knew she should stay hidden, but her feet moved on their own. She stepped forward just as Victor raised his voice. "You really think she loves you, Julian? You think some little waitress cares about anything but your money?" Julian's fists clenched, but he kept his voice calm. "I know she does because she stood by me when she had every reason to walk away. She chose me, not my bank account." Lily's eyes filled with tears. She had never heard Julian speak with such raw conviction. She realized in that moment how much they had both risked for each other. Victor noticed her then. His smile sharpened. Ah, the girl herself, come to witness the fall of her billionaire prince. Lily lifted her chin, her voice steady despite the fear in her chest. "I came to stand with the man I love no matter what." Julian's gaze snapped to hers and something unspoken passed between them, a bond forged in fire and tested in the harshest light. Victor sneered, but Julian rose slowly. "Enough, Victor. I will not let you use her against me. You want to take my company. Come for me directly, but leave her out of it." Victor leaned back, smirking. "You really are willing to lose everything for her?" Julian's eyes hardened. "I would rather lose every dollar I have than lose her." In that moment, Lily realized the true depth of Julian's feelings, not just words, not just gestures, but a man willing to risk his empire for love. Victor saw the truth too, and his expression shifted. Calculating, he realized he had underestimated the strength of their bond. After a tense pause, he waved his hand dismissively. "This is not over, Ward, but enjoy your fairy tale while it lasts." Julian and Lily left together, their hands tightly clasped outside under the night sky. They paused. Julian cupped her face gently. "I meant every word, Lily, every single one." She smiled through tears. "I know, and I am not going anywhere." Their kiss under the stars was soft, slow, filled with the kind of promise that no contract or deal could ever create. It was a moment just for them, a moment that belonged to no headlines, no corporations, no rivals, just two hearts finally choosing each other fully. The next morning, Julian called an emergency board meeting. He laid out a daring plan to restructure the company, cutting ties with toxic partnerships and focusing on long-term vision rather than short-term gains. Some board members resisted, but others rallied, inspired by his clarity and determination. The battle with Victor was not over, but Julian had reclaimed his power, not just as a CEO, but as a man leading from a place of integrity and love. Lily stood by him, every step, no longer just the waitress who had spilled wine on a billionaire, but the woman who had reshaped his world. In the days that followed, they faced challenges, whispers, doubts, but they also discovered an unshakable trust. They learned to laugh in the quiet moments, to share the weight of hard days, to find comfort in the simplest gestures. One night, as they sat on the penthouse balcony, Julian took Lily's hand. "I never believed in fate," he admitted softly, but then you crashed into my life, quite literally, and nothing has been the same. Lily rested her head on his shoulder, smiling. Sometimes the best things begin with a mistake, she murmured. The following weeks brought a strange mixture of calm and tension. Julian worked tirelessly to secure his company's future, while Lily adjusted to the bizarre rhythm of her new life. Every morning she woke in the penthouse wondering how she had ended up here. A girl who once balanced trays in a crowded restaurant, now living in the world of luxury and power. Yet despite the beautiful clothes and glittering events, the thing that mattered most was the quiet moments with Julian. The simple acts like cooking breakfast together in the early morning light or walking hand in hand through Central Park when no one was watching. It was in those moments that Lily felt most grounded, most herself, and most terrified, because she knew deep down that love this rare and beautiful could so easily slip away. One afternoon, as Lily sorted through a pile of mail on Julian's desk, she found an envelope that made her heart stop. It was a letter addressed to Julian from Victor Harlan, marked confidential. Her hands trembled slightly as she debated whether to open it, but curiosity got the better of her. Inside was a single sheet of paper, and as she read the words, her stomach dropped. Victor had uncovered a clause buried deep in Julian's corporate contracts, a clause that, if activated, would force Julian to forfeit controlling interest in his company. The only way to prevent it was to secure a major deal within 30 days. Lily felt her throat tighten with panic. She knew Julian had been fighting hard to save everything he built, but she had not realized how close he was to the edge. That evening, when Julian returned, Lily tried to hide her anxiety, but he noticed immediately. "What is it?" he asked gently. Lily hesitated, then handed him the letter. Julian's face darkened as he read, his jaw tightening. "I was hoping to shield you from this," he admitted quietly. Lily reached for his hand, her eyes searching his. "You cannot carry this alone, Julian. Let me help." Julian sighed, pulling her close. "You help me just by being here, Lily, but I do not want you to feel trapped in my battles." Lily shook her head fiercely. "I am not here because of your company or your money or your status. I am here because I love you, and if we lose everything, we will still have each other." Julian closed his eyes, resting his forehead against hers. "You are the bravest person I know." In the days that followed, they worked together in ways Lily never imagined. She watched Julian navigate complex negotiations with grace and determination. She offered insights from an outsider's perspective that often surprised him. They became a team not just in love, but in life. Yet despite their efforts, the deadline loomed closer and the pressure mounted. One night, Julian came home late, his shoulders heavy with exhaustion. Lily waited up for him, curling into his side as they sat on the couch. "I do not know if I can do this," he murmured. Lily lifted his chin gently, forcing him to meet her gaze. "You're not alone, Julian. We face this together. Whatever happens, we face it together." Then came the night of the final deal. Julian had arranged a meeting with an influential investor whose support could turn the tide. Lily insisted on going with him, not to sit at the table but to be there in quiet support. As Julian prepared, Lily smoothed his tie, her fingers lingering at his collar. "You have already won," she whispered softly. Julian raised an eyebrow, smiling faintly. "How do you figure that? Because no matter the outcome, you have stayed true to yourself and to us, and that is something no one can take away." Julian kissed her softly, his hand brushing her cheek. "I never knew I could love someone this much." The meeting stretched late into the night. Julian argued his case with passion and integrity. Lily waited outside, her heart pounding with every passing hour. When the doors finally opened, Julian emerged, his expression unreadable. Lily rushed to his side, her hands gripping his. Julian took a slow breath, then smiled. "We did it, Lily." The relief that flooded through her left her dizzy with joy. They returned to the penthouse that night, not as a billionaire and a waitress, but as two people who had fought and won side by side. They held each other close, wrapped in the quiet triumph of love and resilience. But just as they began to exhale, a new challenge emerged. Victor had leaked a false story to the press, claiming that Lily was secretly pregnant and that Julian had only finalized the deal to protect a scandal. The media frenzy reignited with a vengeance. Reporters camped outside the Penthouse. Tabloids printed lurid headlines, and social media exploded with speculation. Lily felt her world spinning out of control. She tried to ignore the noise, but the whispers cut deep. "Am I ruining your life?" she asked Julian one night, her voice trembling. Julian pulled her into his arms, his voice fierce and unwavering. "You are saving my life, Lily. You remind me what matters." Determined to reclaim their narrative, Julian arranged an exclusive interview with a trusted journalist. Together, he and Lily sat down and told their story, not just the polished version, but the real one. They spoke of mistakes and forgiveness, of unexpected connections, of love that grew not from perfection, but from honesty. The world listened, and something remarkable happened. The tide began to turn. People saw not a scandal, but a love story, not a power play, but a partnership. Julian's reputation stabilized, and Lily's quiet strength earned widespread admiration. One evening, as they stood on the balcony overlooking the city, Julian turned to Lily, his expression tender. "When I first brought you here, I thought I was saving you from your troubles, but the truth is you saved me from mine." Lily smiled softly, tears glimmering in her eyes. "I never wanted your money or your world, Julian. I just wanted your heart." Julian cupped her face, his thumb brushing away a tear. "You have all of me, Lily, all of me forever, under the stars." They kissed slowly, deeply, sealing a promise that no headline, no rival, no challenge could break. Months later, the city pulsed with its usual restless energy. But for Lily and Julian, life had settled into a quieter rhythm. They no longer cared about headlines or market shares or public opinion. They had survived the storms, endured the scandals, and walked through fire together. Now they were simply two people who had chosen each other again and again. Julian still ran his empire, but he no longer lived for it. He carved out space for Lily in his life, not as an accessory or a trophy, but as an equal, an anchor, a partner. Lily, meanwhile, had found her own voice. She no longer saw herself as just the girl who had spilled wine on a billionaire. She was the woman who had stood tall in the face of chaos, who had fought for love on her own terms, who had learned that her worth was never measured by wealth or status. On a cool spring evening, they sat together on the balcony of the Penthouse, wrapped in a shared blanket, watching the city lights shimmer below. Lily leaned her head on Julian's shoulder, her fingers laced with his. "Do you ever miss it?" she asked softly. "Miss?" What Julian murmured, kissing the top of her head, the thrill of it all. She said the chase, the power, the spotlight. Julian gave a quiet laugh, pulling her closer. "I thought I would," he admitted. "But no, the only thing I miss when I am away is you. You are my home now." Lily smiled, her heart full. "I never imagined this life," she whispered. Julian turned to her, his eyes gentle. "I never imagined you. And yet, here we are." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, letting the sounds of the city drift up to meet them. Finally, Lily spoke again, her voice thoughtful. "Sometimes I wonder how we made it through everything." Julian's gaze softened. "We made it because we chose to fight not against each other, but for each other. We made it because we learned that love is not about perfection. It is about persistence. It is about staying when it would be easier to walk away." Lily felt tears prick her eyes. "You have changed me, Julian." Julian shook his head, smiling. "No, Lily, you revealed me. You reminded me of who I wanted to be that night." As they curled up together, Julian whispered a simple truth that had taken him a lifetime to understand. Love is not something you win, Lily. It is something you build every day with every choice, and with you, I will always choose us. Lily closed her eyes, her heart full of quiet joy. She knew there would be more challenges ahead, more moments of doubt or fear, but she also knew they would face them side by side. No longer billionaire and waitress, no longer hero and damsel, just two souls who had found something rare and worth keeping. In the end, their story was not about a contract or a scandal or a corporate war. It was about the moment a powerful man let down his walls and the moment a quiet woman found her strength. It was about love that refused to be bought or broken, love that had been tested in the harshest ways and come out stronger. Together, they had learned the one truth that mattered most. Love does not ask you to be perfect. It only asks you to be brave.